Is Charli XCX bringing the Brat era to an end? And I talked to one of the songwriters behind what I think is one of the best pop songs of the last 10, 15 years, Ariana Grande's Into You. All that and more coming up on the Pop Pod. I am Pop Sam Cam. Thank you for joining me. It is my birthday today, so I'm going to give you a blockbuster episode talking about one of my favorite pop songs of all time, Into You, with Savan Kotecha, one of the songwriters behind it. And I'm also going to tell you my 3 most played songs at the moment. That coming up at the end of the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, follow or subscribe. You can also hit me on my DMs if you want to hear anything on the podcast or you think there's some music that I should be covering. Also, send me a voice note with your controversial take on anything pop music related. popsamcam@theinterns.net is where you can send that one, and I will play it on the podcast. Let's get into the headlines. Addison Rae has begun teasing a new snippet of a song that we're expecting to be on her forthcoming debut album. I think that this one is called Headphones On. Have a listen to it.
Put your headphones on. Guess I gotta accept the pain. Need a cigarette to make me feel better. Every good thing comes my way, so I still get told up.
Charli XCX will be playing Coachella this weekend, one of the biggest shows of the Brat era, but it seems something is going on with the Brat era and potentially she is bringing it to an end. Basically, if you've ever been out to Coachella, you see on the drive out that there are all these billboards promoting the artists that are playing on the weekend, and Charli has one for Brat. However, Brat has been basically scribbled out. There's a number of theories about what this could actually mean, but it's potentially marking kind of the end of the Brat era and it morphing into something else. When she played Coachella a couple years ago with the Crash era, she'd basically graffitied the stage, marking the end of that era and the start of Brat. Maybe this could be the end of Brat, although she still has a number of Brat arena shows coming up, so I'm not quite sure what is going on here, but I know that she's going to pull out something big at Coachella. Marina is teasing her new single called Cantissimo. I think that she's going to be debuting it live at Coachella, but she's also going to release it this Thursday with the music video to follow on Friday. I also think we could be getting some album news as well, so we'll sit tight and wait to see that. Billboard has ranked the 25 best female rappers of the 21st century, putting Nicki Minaj at number 1, which I think is something that not many people could argue with. They put Missy Elliott at number 2 and also Lauryn Hill at number 3. In terms of other notable rankings, they also have Cardi B at number 11, Megan Thee Stallion at number 15, and Doja Cat at number 16. Doechii also snuck into the list at number 24, marking probably one of the newest rappers to make the list alongside Glorilla. Let's go to the charts where Janet Jackson has entered the US Spotify charts for the first time ever this week with her song Someone to Call My Lover, which is charted at number 177 with over 300,000 streams. It's amazing. This song is from 2001 from her album All For You, and it's just gone from strength to strength thanks to it going viral on TikTok. We have a few first-timers on the Billboard Hot 100 this week, with Raven Lenae coming in with Love Me Not at number 81.
And no, it's hard to say, but I wish you were right here.
Somber, an artist that I've been talking about quite a lot on the podcast, has also entered the charts at number 90 with his song Back to Friends. And finally, End of the World by Miley Cyrus is the biggest gainer on the global Spotify charts, up 53 spots to number 104. She's going to want to be going a lot higher than that to match the success of Flowers, but it's heading in a positive direction.
I'm so into you, I can barely breathe.
Let's get into the main part of the podcast today. Over the next few months on this podcast, I'm going to be spotlighting some of the greatest pop songs of the 21st century by talking to some of the songwriters and producers behind them. I've got plenty of amazing ones lined up, but I want to start with one of my favorite, which is Ariana Grande's Into You. Compared to singles like Side to Side and also Break Free off her album Dangerous Woman, Into You kind of underperformed, peaking at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, but as the years have gone on, it's come to be appreciated as a pop classic of sorts because I think it's just a quintessential pop song. It's simple, it's straight to the point, but it's also like bursting with melodrama and emotion, and Ariana Grande's vocal delivery is also incredible. It was produced by Max Martin and Ilya, but today I'm speaking to Savan Kotecha, who was one of the songwriters behind it. Savan has also worked with everyone from Lizzo to One Direction. He was very fundamental in One Direction's early days. He's done so many Ariana Grande songs, including songs like God is a Woman, No Tears Left to Cry. He's worked with the Backstreet Boys. He's worked with Ellie Goulding on Love Me Like You Do. The list just goes on and on and on. But here's our chat about Into You. Into You, did very well, but it's not one of her biggest hits. But whenever you speak to an Ariana fan or you speak to a pop critic, Into You is at the top of the pyramid in terms of the finest written pop songs of all time, and certainly at the top of my pyramid. And for me, I just think that opening line is just genius. It's so melodramatic and over the top, but so direct. And from the minute the song starts, it pulls you in immediately. Can you talk to me a little bit about that line?
From the composition, from the start of the composition, the idea to finishing, the writing of the song was a month of tweaking and
Wow.
And lots of lyric rewrites. That was when I was into phonetics and
It sounds labored over in the best way, in
yeah,
terms
him
of
and Max,
every phrase fit.
yeah, and him and Max on the production side, they went in and I would say at the time I don't think we realized that it would be that it would last, and that's the great thing about streaming era, right? You really see what
Yeah.
songs people. And we were disappointed. I remember that it wasn't bigger than it was because Side to Side really took, Side to Side, especially on radio, took a life of its own.
Yeah.
So we just come off of the first project we did with Ari, which, for me after One Direction was my first sort of thing back.
Yeah.
I'd moved to LA, Julian John took over the One Direction thing and it was fantastic. I was not needed. And it was sort of okay, what do I do now? And I just had a baby. It was and I was in writer's block really badly, and actually Carl and Rami helped take me out of it because they brought me in a room where One Last Time was created, or the start of One Last Time was created.
So one last time, I need to be the one who takes you home.
We had just come off of, I think it was One Last Time, Break Free, Love Me Harder, Problem, and Bang Bang. So
Incredible.
the second record, and me and Ilya just done. He did some production on Bang Bang, but him and I writing the Problem together. But we really realized, because we had a few hits in between that together, that we had this chemistry that this is a thing. Our creative partnership and friendship is a thing. And so we were okay, really, next album we gotta nail it, and it was so tough that there was so many humps to go over because she was on tour and we were talking all the time, so she was so informed. We were very informed about her life and her feelings and trying to capture things that she would say. I would write notes every time we would FaceTime, and she would say things that I would just write down, and she was, I don't want to talk too much for her because it's her sort of journey. But I remember she was just really in love at that time, and I remember Into You was a title I had. I think it was off of something she said, and we had the way we approached that Dangerous Woman thing. That was an EP on it, and the way it was in my brain was okay, my favorite albums even Backstreet Millennium, even Michael Jackson, they all every song had a thing, you know, like Backstreet would have like the rock influence song, and there would be like the R&B influence song. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah,
very
yeah,
pop up.
yeah.
Just have this, and I was like, okay, let's. We were like thinking of like what are things that she hasn't done. Like Bad Decision felt like very like Macklemore. If you remember that Bad Decision, you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Bad
yeah, for
Decision.
sure.
It was like
Yeah.
it was Can't Hold Us Down energy. That's what we were trying to get
Yeah,
from
yeah,
Bad
yeah.
Decision. And
Yeah.
like Side to Side came from, well, I remember thinking one day, well, Mariah Carey never did a reggae song. Let's do a reggae song.
Mm.
We had this idea. I don't remember if it came from Ari or Ilya of doing. There was this idea of like, let's do an a cappella because she's such an amazing vocal. I've said this before. She's Jimi Hendrix on vocal. She's that
Yeah.
good. Let's do an a cappella song. Let's try and figure out an up tempo a cappella song, right?
Mm.
If you remember Boys to Men, Thank You,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And I think Ilya started this like little riff of and he sort of stacked it and he showed it to me. And it
Yeah.
was like, oh great, let's write on that. I was trying to come up with melodies and stuff. And like nothing, very quickly we're like, oh, we can't do an a cappella song. So he started putting chords and started building a track while I was sort of thinking of things. And I remember at some point Max came in the room while there was like a track thing, and because I've got voice notes of that era, and like we didn't come up with any melodies. But then I had this thing in my head of one of the things in that theory that of like, oh, what hasn't been she hasn't done before with her voice was also, well, like she's never done something very like Michael Jackson staccato, like
Yeah.
dangerous. So it was like that was the essence of the chorus. And then I had Into You written down, so all of a sudden that melody, like it was some version of that.
So baby, come light me up, and maybe I'll let you on it. A little bit dangerous, but baby, that's how I want it.
I was on the mic singing melodies to the verse, and I think I had I'm so into you, there's something you know, just something. It was like a longer phrase. And Max was in the dining room of the studio, and he just screamed through the door, "Space!" And we're like, "What?" And he comes in and he goes, "Space, add some space to it. Like, what if you just stop the line there, like, of what the melody was, and get rid of the other stuff?" So what it was then was, "I'm down to you, I can hardly breathe," and then giving that space, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how it came about, that first line.
Which is amazing because that makes it because the space is where you can almost like hear her heart beating. Like it makes such a tense atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's such that was one of the things I learned from him, which he's so good at, like zooming out of a song and and if you listen to Springsteen, I've been listening to a lot of Springsteen lately, like Dancing in the Dark or Streets of Philadelphia. He's so good with space, like
Yeah.
trusting the space, and I
Mm.
think that song and that sort of just comment and tweak was like such a lesson in for me in the future for the future from that song onwards in space. Like it's okay in the room when you're singing, you're jamming, you want to fill up every space. But as a
Yeah.
listener, you need a break. And he's such a genius at thinking like the listener.
I was thinking like you've confirmed it by saying that an artist came into a session with you like asking for an interview because I feel like now pop artists go into the studio and they want an interview or a dancing on my own or like anything by Lord as well. I feel like are on the blackboard for
Yeah.
influencers. Why do you think like Into You has become such a song for like people who study pop music?
I don't you know what? I mean, listen, back then especially, we spent so much love and care on every note and every
Yeah.
we had the time to do it, to like really challenge every melody. Like we had a month, and then Ari brings her magic to it and tweaks some things, and then we sit in the studio and we all together are like, okay, what if we do this and try this and and it's the TLC, and like I think sometimes like an artist will come in and say I want an interview, but they don't want to spend a month on the song.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is we're no better. We were no better or more talented than anyone else. It's just like an athlete, right?
Yeah.
Like, you ever see that Kobe Bryant um, speech where he talks about, okay, most athletes will wake up at 9 and they'll train at like
Yeah.
11 to 2, and then they maybe go home and they'll train like for another hour or 2 hours from like 4 to 6, and that's it. But what
Yeah.
happens if you wake up at 4 a.m. and you train from 5 to 7? You come home, you eat, you train from 9 to 10, and then after a while you've just done so. And that's the thing with, to me, with pop music, especially melody writing, is it's the time you spend to challenge, leave no stone unturned, and try things and try messing it up, and then you always have what you have. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, that magic thing that makes it better than just good, comes about. And in this sort of speed, release things very fast and blah blah blah, that's disappeared, I think, for the most part. Um,
Yeah.
but like, but that, you know, tender love and care, I think is so important. And what it proves to me that people really love those songs, and especially into you, is that like, it's like, well, that's why you do it, because then,
Mm.
however many years later, people still really love that one. And I don't know, I don't know if it's because of that, because we really feel like we crafted something. I don't think at the time, if you told us which song is going to be, maybe Ilya or Max or Ari would have a different opinion than I did. Then we'd be like, that's the one that everyone says is the song. I think I remember after the
Yeah.
pandemic, after I took my sort of, I had taken this long sabbatical. It was around that time where the new crop of producers started popping off, and new crop of writers and artists. The new generation started coming up, and they were all telling
Yeah.
me, yeah, that Into You was their thing. We were like, really? I remember being
Yeah.
like, oh, really? That one? Cool. And obviously the audience agreed, because sometimes the audience doesn't agree when it's the artists and all of them saying that's.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Um, but yeah, it's, and again, all credit, on the, especially the production, Max and Ilya. Um, I remember them spending so much time in that room when I was coming in and out, and just said, "You're still tweaking it," like on the track. They just did such a. It was yeah. Again, it's like a great athlete. It's about the time you spend practicing. It's the time they spent on it, on that
Yeah.
track, and the time we spent crafting the melodies, and the time on the lyrics, and someone else could come and say, "Hey, that word would sound better. Okay, let's put that word." There's no egos. Whatever makes the song best. Um, to make sure every word mattered and sounded great. And
Which
yeah, I mean,
I love, because I feel like it's such a story now to be like, oh, the song was written in 10 minutes. Like
yeah,
it's almost a boast now to say how quickly it was done, but
yeah.
the
And by the
proof
way,
is recording
sometimes
with
that's
that
gonna
song.
happen. Yeah, sometimes that's gonna happen. Like, um, one last time for the most part was a fast thing for me.
Yeah.
But I'm so addicted to crafting. That's what I love. Sometimes
Yeah.
artists
I
don't love
feel
doing that.
yeah.
Sometimes artists don't love doing that, and then they don't want to work. But like, I just love. That's what I like. And I don't want to do something unless it's gonna matter.
To finish up the podcast today, I want to give you an insight into the kind of music I'm listening to the most at the moment, so you can check if we're on the same wavelength. The first song that I've been listening to a lot right now is Past Life by Ariana Grande.
Always wonder what would happen if I let you lose me. Always wonder what would happen if I let myself need more.
Off the Eternal Sunshine Brighter Days Ahead Deluxe Edition. This has ended up being my favorite song from the collection of songs, because I think that it just has this like weight to it. I think the strings are so dramatic. I think that her vocal performance is one of the most forthright on the whole record. I absolutely love it. The next one is Sunshine and Rain by Carly Uchis. This is the first single off her forthcoming album, Sincerely, and this just feels like a warm hug to me. Her music has that ability to do that to me, but this one just has such a like ease to it. It's so effortless. And even though essentially the lyrics are talking about how the world has kind of lost its way and we need to find connection once again, she manages to make it feel so nice and not existential and scary at all. And that's something that only Carly can do. And my last one is Blade Bird off OK Lou's album Choke Enough. This is an album that came out earlier in the year, and it's all kind of like post-hyperpop, Danielle Hall, A.G. Cook produced work. But this one is quite different to the rest of the album in that it has a sort of acoustic flair to it. But I think within that, you get to hear OK Lou's voice so much better, and it's got just a sweetness to it that I have not been able to get past. I think it's incredible. Let me know what you're listening to in the comments or wherever you can find me. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Rate it 5 stars if you're a fan, and I will see you on Friday.